I think the problem we have basically with dolphins is we don't understand them yet.
So there's something called the Bubakiki effect, which was, I think, discovered in the early 1900s. And they were these two shapes. One had rounded edges and one had some very pointed edges.
I think I mentioned 6 dimensions. So it's 3 dimensions plus pitch, yaw, and roll, as pilots will understand.
I think that you make a really valid point is, I'm optimistic in terms of the science, but the fact is that over 50 years, in terms of this communication research, not much better off than we were 50 years ago or 60 years ago.
We also know they're incredibly intelligent, and if you work with them, they're curious, and they even get bored all the time.
AI is going to take their vocalizations and create a language.
Today, we're diving into a heated debate that's capturing the attention of scientists and animal lovers alike. Can artificial intelligence truly communicate with dolphins? With groundbreaking research and new technologies emerging, does the prospect of bridging the gap between our species raise more questions than answers? Are we on the brink of understanding dolphin language with AI, or are we setting ourselves up for disappointment? Joining me today are 2 esteemed guests who have devoted their lives to unlocking the mysteries of dolphin communication. First, we have Jack Kassewitz, a renowned animal communication expert with over 30 years of hands-on experience working with dolphins. Jack has pioneered significant advancements in our understanding of dolphin vocalizations and founded the Speak Dolphin Communication Research Team, a leading initiative in this field. His recent groundbreaking research features a remarkable dolphin named Zeus, who has not only demonstrated the ability to mimic human vowel sounds, but also raised intriguing questions about interspecies communication. Also joining us today is Dr. John Kroeker, a distinguished neurobiology expert with a PhD from Cornell University. He's the founder of ELIZA Corporation, a pioneering company that revolutionized speech recognition technology and was sold in 2017 for an impressive $170 million. John's extensive background in both neuroscience and technology provides a unique perspective on how artificial intelligence can intersect with animal communication, particularly in understanding the complexities of dolphin interactions. But with the recent release of Google's AI model, DolphinGemma, are we truly advancing towards meaningful dialogue with dolphins, or are we overestimating AI's capabilities? In this discussion, we'll explore the implications of AI in dolphin communication and whether these technological advancements can genuinely help us connect with dolphins on a deeper level. Are Jack and John optimistic about the future of AI in this field, or are there more questions to be answered? Let's find out.
I'd like to really dwell more on what we're doing. And
Okay.
Let's bring in AI, but we don't know anything about it. And it's difficult to say anything about it because it's evolving so fast. So any deficiencies it has now, it might not have in a week.
Well, John, where you're correct is I don't know that we can even comment that much on this new AI program because it'd be unfair. We haven't even seen this program.
Right.
They say it's going to be open source in a month, so we can just say we look forward to receiving a copy or something,
Well, one of the things I would say about what's going on in dolphin research today that I did a little look back over the last 20 years, people breaking the code, and virtually every 6 months to a year, somebody breaks the code. And it's obviously after 20, 25 years, it's not that easy. When we wrote our book, the reason we didn't call breaking the dolphin code, we call it deciphering the dolphin code. And to me, it's more about this very complex language, complex communication system that dolphins have. And I just personally would love to believe that artificial intelligence can break it. But I think what artificial intelligence can do is help us aggregate all the information, because we all have hundreds and hundreds of hours of recordings that would be really great if we had some system, some computer system that could aggregate and find similarity in terms of the echolocation, and maybe even able to look at those signals of echolocation and find some commonality. So I look forward to it, but we don't have it yet. That's what really concerned me about this big release about artificial intelligence, yet there's been no pre-print papers, that we've got no data of what they've done so far other than this is what they're going to do. To me, is a little weak in terms of science. When we made our discoveries of the novel sounds, the AEOU, It took us several years to really review the information. And in fact, it wasn't until recent the software was available to give us a comprehensive review of the formant structure, these dolphin vowels. And so I look forward to the opportunity of using AI, but we're going to continue with what we call the hard work, which is just going through the sounds and working with them. There's no panacea. AI or any computer software is no better than the person operating it. That's just my opinion, John. I don't know what you think.
Well, Jack, I'd agree. I think there's tremendous promise for using AI in research in general, and that's just beginning. I don't think I've seen too many results yet, but researchers in all fields are excited about it or trying to use it. I think the problem we have basically with dolphins is we don't understand them yet, and we don't have the data. So with no data, it doesn't matter how much study and AI you use. We've been doing this other project, which is how they scan and how they perceive targets. And I've been looking at, as you know, the video and the stop frame. We have this behavior for hundreds of hours. And what I see is this is a whole different world. We don't understand it. They are living in, I think I mentioned 6 dimensions. So it's 3 dimensions plus pitch, yaw, and roll, as pilots will understand. And they do this with precision, and they do this incredibly fast, and they do it all the time. That's their life. Oh, maybe 7 dimensions because they're equally at home in the air or in water. They might be jumping in the air. They might be just looking in the air. They are in motion all the time. And there's a reason for it. As you study the video, you see, whereas we have saccades where our eyes dart around all the time, incredibly fast. It's the only faster movement we have is blinking. Dolphins have to move their whole head. And you only see it really if you're doing stop motion. So they're flicking their head, they're using roll, they're using yaw, they're using pitch all the time to scan their environment. And the reason they're doing this is because they're echolocating. They're constantly echolocating when they're getting near a target, not just a distance like echolocation. That's a whole different mechanism. But this assists the vision. I mean, their eyes are excellent and adapted for air and for water, but underwater is often murky. You can't see very far. Anybody who's been skin diving, if you're not in crystal clear water around coral reefs in the tropic, it's murky. What do you do if you're a dolphin and you live in this? Well, you've got the echolocation and you've got the target, we think 3-dimensional target perception, but we don't know yet. And they do this with scanning behavior, and we can see that. But nobody's really described this yet. So that doesn't exist. A lot of their interaction you can see is 3-dimensional. If there's 2 dolphins, they will swim around each other within millimeters of each other. They don't hit. They understand exactly where they are. If we had gymnasts that could do that, they would win medals.
Yes.
So that's just the beginning, just a piece of what we're beginning to see, which we haven't begun to understand.
I think, John's so much better at the science part of it than I am, but I think there's also been an evolution of the understanding of dolphin communication. I don't know that we understand it terribly in terms of the data much more than we did 50 years ago. We got a lot of data, but I think one of the things that we have seen in our research, which is worth bringing up here, is that we now are convinced, based on the data, that the sounds are produced from dual emitters, and they emit 2 sounds at one time. And it's that interphasing of those sounds and the returning of those signals that somehow brings about the images like we saw in Man in the Water. Our goal in the drawback to Man in the Water was that was done on something called a simoscope, which could not do it in real time. John, and our hope is that we're going to be able to see those things in real time, which would give us really the basis of a pictorial language. I mean, that's really where we're going. The complexities of the information that most recently said that, AI is going to take their vocalizations and create a language. My comment on that, I hope that works. However, I'm not sure that their vocalizations are robust, that there's enough information being generated there to bring about a language. Whereas in echolocation, where there's lots of images coming in real time, that's more likely to look like some kind of revolutionary, but some kind of language, a pictorial language. I think the other thing that I believe John would kind of support me on, because I kind of screw this up when I explain it. Hopefully he'll fix what I say, but For years and years, it's been very romantically represented that dolphins use holographic, the signals that they're getting is holographic. And I think, John, I may be wrong, but I think that we're pretty convinced it's more like thermography, like the CAT scan, where it's a build up these images to create. It's almost like old time film where you have multiple frames coming across to build up a three-dimensional image. I think that that's significant. So the two things that we've seen is there's a change in the understanding from holography to thermography. I'm sorry, Jim. We have seen a change from holography to tomography, which is the building up of images like you see in the CAT scan. And the other couple of things that I think that we've seen is that these animals, it's unquestionable if you spend the amount of time in the water we spend in the water, these animals are trying to communicate with us to the best of their ability. But our systems, the interface is kind of 20 million years of evolutionary disconnect, and we're trying to reconnect it.
I guess I'm more conservative from the science point of view. I don't know if we know what's going on yet, but we do know that
That's a good point.
they are acting completely like they're imaging, and they're doing things, and they're every action they do. You see a dolphin coming into a target, say, and it looks like they're playing. It always looks like they're smiling because that's the way their jawline happens to be set. And it looks like they're playing. They're not playing. That every motion they do is on purpose. That's becoming clear. And what they're doing is scanning. The same way we scan with our eyes, they scan with sound. And so we know they're doing this on purpose. We also know they're incredibly intelligent. And if you work with them, they're curious. They're curious and intelligent. And they even get bored all the time. If you do something that's repetitive with them, they quickly get bored. We have to smile when we see this because it's a human characteristic. So it's not surprising that they would, out of interest, out of curiosity, perhaps out of boredom, say, well, these people or these creatures that I work with are making sounds that have these characteristics. Let me reflect that and see what they do. And that to me sort of would explain why you found that example of a dolphin actually doing vowels. And what's the motivation behind that? Well, we guess an attempt to communicate, but we don't know yet. But certainly it's remarkable.
Yeah, John. Yeah, I think that you make a really valid point. Is I'm optimistic in terms of the science, but the fact is that over 50 years, we're kind of, in terms of this communication research, not much better off than we were 50 years ago or 60 years ago. Even though the science is advancing and the equipment is advancing, there's a lot of really remarkable dolphin researchers out there. They talk about the Wild Dolphin Project in the Bahamas. This is an amazing, great program, a great project. They've been recording for years and years the spotted dolphins, and their research is impeccable research. I just kind of felt, John, when I read the article by the AI program, they were almost taking advantage of the data that's available, suggesting what they can do. And that kind of bothered me because my sense is, yes, it can be tremendously helpful, but I'm not quite sure it can do everything that was said in the press release. And that's what was surprising to me because, when we released novel sounds, we immediately put it up on ResearchGate and gave scientists an opportunity to review it. I would love to review the preliminary research this AI has come up with. Anyway, back to you, John.
Well, we'll see when it comes out. Yeah, there's people doing AI research are incredibly excited nowadays, and that kind of spills over. And some things are very exciting and other things are really rather dumb still. If anybody's actually used AI, it sounds like a stuffy professor sometimes.
Rudimentary forms of AI for 20 years, I would think.
We were in our speech recognition company. We were very early researchers, and we were using AI 20 years ago. Just we didn't advertise the fact. We just made use of it for helping people in medical situations. That was our mission. But yeah, it's what you do. It's advanced software is always called AI. And then when it gets used, it's just called software again. That's what's been going on for 50 years.
Could you give us a sense? I know this is, we should have put this at the top of the discussion, but what really is AI?
Well, as I say, historically, it's been advanced software of any sort. And the notion of artificial intelligence is actually, I would say, aspirational. That's where we'd like to be. When we used AI for doing natural conversations, which again, we've been doing for 20 years, I prefer to call it simulated intelligence. intelligence. You can't talk to people using a computer without people acting like the computer's a person. That's the way conversation goes. I've listened to millions of conversations between a computer and real people, and you can't get people to stop saying sir or ma'am to the voice.
That's very funny.
You can't, because we're polite. We were brought up in a barn, and we're talking, so it's always a person to person. Talking isn't in isolation. So we do that. So what our job was in having conversations was to make sure the computer would act in a way that was natural and expected, and therefore somewhat human-like. It was a simulation. And much of what's going on now is a simulation. Now, what's new is there was a breakthrough in improvements in neural nets, which has caused this whole AI revolution. It unfortunately takes ridiculous amounts of horsepower on the computer side to do, but they're making some significant progress. And basically what they're able to do, collect statistics from human text that they gather over the internet, and then model that. It becomes a model of what humans might say. So it's, again, a simulation of what a human does. And this could be it already is very valuable for a lot of routine things. If you want to summarize a document or something like that, it's fantastic. Whether it's going to do novel research or not, a lot of people are very, very hopeful in fields from mathematics to biology. It seems like they've done some wonderful things in protein folding and drug discovery already, or at least people are saying that. We'll see. There's a lot of potential. Now, for deciphering dolphin sounds, well, what are the sounds doing? If I'm yelling at a team in a stadium, that's not language. If I'm calling to my kids in the park, those are more signals, the way we record from monkeys or something like that, than language. Come home, stop that. It's not much different from when I'm yelling at my dog. If we are and this is certainly some of the signals that are recorded. They're distance communications. They have to be simple. If you're calling to somebody that's far away, you don't make a complicated sentence. You yell something that's expected, that's quite loud. And so a lot of that may be what we're recording from the dolphins, not their intimate interactions. Again, if you use dogs as a convenient example of aliens among us, we have no idea what a dog's life is like. There are different kinds of barks. We could record that. There's been advances in trying to interpret dog barks. But if you see two dogs interacting, it's mostly in terms of posture, tongue flicks, tail flicks, and smell. And 90% of their world is smell, and we can't participate in that. We simply don't have the olfactory senses to begin to share in that sensory modality, I feel like. Well, dolphins are doing three-dimensional echolocation and sound. If we work backwards and say they have 10 times more auditory neurons in their brain than we do, their auditory nerve leading from the ear to the brain is 10 times denser, and everything they listen to is translated into upper frequencies compared to what we do. They're using all this brain power. If this were an AI computer, what's all that computing going for? We have huge parts of our brain devoted to vision. There's less devoted to vision in the dolphin, and much, much more devoted to sound. We don't know what's going on there. And I think we ought to be very humble in terms of, beginning to approach it.
Well, for me, a serious 25 years of trying to understand it, I'm still marveled about how amazing their system is. John, could you address maybe a little of what we've discovered about the possibilities of dual phonators and that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, this will be in an upcoming publication. We've done years of research, the echolocation pulses that dolphins use when they approach a target, not from far away, but from a meter or two. And they're clearly recognizing the target, and we give them different kinds of targets, and they orient them. It seems like they're looking at these, and certainly when they get close, they are using their eyes as well. And the kind of pulses they set out are very complex. There's high frequencies, there's low frequencies, and as near as what we can tell, the frequencies come from at least two sources in the dolphin head. So they have, the way we have binocular vision, they may have binocular, we have to say binocular because that's all we live in, but they have that same kind of cross connect in sound. And if we didn't have binocular vision, we wouldn't have depth in a lot of things. And they're certainly able to perceive depth by using two sources. But we're still early stages in understanding that. We're just finding out what they do.
And John, what do you think that artificial intelligence, how could it help us?
I haven't seen it work with continuous signals yet. Maybe somebody's starting to do that. It works much better with concrete things in words, or things you can describe in words. So business processes are always described in words, and there's a zillion documents floating around. And so you can process business processes that way. They're beginning to use it in robotics. I'm not familiar with that, so that may be a way forward, because robotics has to use continuous signals. And we're building from, again, 50 years of pattern recognition, which gets back to the confusion, which is linguistic intelligent processing and which is pattern recognition. The speech recognition is pattern recognition. Lots and lots of industrial processes already use visual pattern recognition. This is absolutely standard in industry today, but this is not the new AI. This is traditional AI. We're not at the point where we have a lot of confusing data. We have some critical data, which is intellectually confusing. And what we don't know that AI can do yet is make creative leaps, like leading researchers do.
Is that what when they talk about generative AI, is that what they're talking about?
Yeah, generative means it makes stuff up, okay, as opposed to just being passive and kind of listening. So it generates text, and that's it on a basis of what it's been trained on. Basically trolling the entire internet and harvesting that and seeing what the correlations are. I mean, we all have experience in using Google search over the years. And you notice that if you ask it for 3 words, it looks for, sometimes those 3 words occur together, sometimes it just looks for those words by themselves. It knows there's 3 words, but it's kind of dumb about it. And so the big advance is to now look at words with real language understanding, or at least language statistics, and start putting the logic and the human processing that's embedded in our written language and make models from that. And then from that, you can generate human-like text, and human-like often becomes human, as effective as humans. So that's what's going on. We're having, and it's steered. Again, if you look at AI and how do you use AI, it's all about what they call prompt engineering, or expertise in using the prompts. In other words, as humans, how do we steer this beast? It can do lots of things, but if you don't become clever at how to manage it as a human for your needs, it doesn't do you any good.
I noticed, I'm sorry, John, I recently got a pair of the new Meta glasses. Excuse me, it has onboard AI, and I noticed it's wrong as many times as it is right when I ask it a question. And I guess what I'm suggesting is that AI is going to come up with answers even if they're wrong.
Yeah, we're at the stage of new technology, which has been called the dancing bear stage. If you see a dancing bear, everybody's amazed, and nobody noticed that the bear doesn't dance very well. It's just the fact that the bear dances is incredible. And so that's what happens with new technology. And speech recognition is just getting over that, I think, where it's wrong as many times as it's right, but it's been right enough times, so we'll put up with it. And I think AI is very much in the early stages where, well, it's often dumb, it's often wrong, but we just go on, well, let's try asking it a different way and to get where we need to go. And I think we'll get through that. It's only been a couple of years that this new technology has been out, but we're not there yet. It's it's bleeding edge at this point.
I agree with one of the things you said before, that I suspect that these vocalizations that they're going to attempt to use AI on are probably more social in structure than language in structure. That they're, like you said, when you're at the ballpark and you go, hey, that's not necessarily language. That's more a social interaction that has some component of a word, but not necessarily a language. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I think that's what, unfortunately, all we could record at a distance are loud sounds that travel well. It's likely they are what we would call calls or signals in other species. Yeah, it's also likely that there is a language between dolphins. It's likely that it's highly acoustic, and it's also likely it's not something we perceive yet, given everything they can do with sound and the fact that they are doing something that's far more complex than we understand with sound, given the size of their acoustic brain. So there we are. It's not easy. They're swimming in the ocean. We're not there. If we were there, that would change their behavior. It's difficult and unpleasant to strap instruments to them. So what do we do? It's not an easy research problem.
Yeah, I know. Since you came on the team, you and I have been talking about how it's not that the answers are difficult; they're just very complex. And it's in the process of analyzing them, you make one mistake, you can throw everything off for the next 2 years. So you have to be very careful about how you review and interpret the information that you have. I'm down here right now in Mexico working with 30 dolphins, and we've actually focused in on vocalizations only because of the paper that we recently released. But if you work with dolphins in the setting I am, which is in human care, it is obvious there's something much more going on than what's coming out of the blowhole. There's much more. I see very little of the use of the blowhole for interspecies communication down here, or inter dolphin communication down here. I do, however, we were working yesterday on an experiment with the Bubakiki effect, which are these two symbols that are novel in nature and have some underpinning in the human brain, suggests that language may be hardwired more than we thought it was. And I noticed that when I put it in the water and the dolphins would approach it, they were not approaching it with a vocalization. They were approaching it like a target with echolocation, and there was a uniqueness between whether they were targeting on Booba or whether they were targeting on Kiki. I see, and there were other dolphins surrounding them, so that they could have very easily communicated vocalization, what was going on. They didn't use that at all. It was all echolocation. And I think that's one of the significant points, is that it's more likely that the blowhole the blowhole sounds are social in nature, and in fact, their true opportunity for a robust language will more likely be found in their echolocation and how it blends together. But we still don't understand how it works. After 50 years, John, we still don't really know how it works.
And that's, I think, because it's not going to be new mathematics, but it's going to be creative mathematics. It's just a different, acoustics is a hard field, and there's lots of mathematics in it. And pattern recognition is another hard field, and there's lots of mathematics in that. And this is a new application of both of those things. I've looked at many, 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 many formulae and approaches to both of these things, and none of them have worked yet. So there's something just over the hill that is the right answer for understanding what they're doing. And once we get it, it's going to be obvious.
But we're still optimistic.
Oh, it's there. We're inching up on it. A few years ago, we didn't know there were two sources. So we were scratching our heads for how they could possibly get any basis for a planar, at least, or maybe 3D description. Now we know they have that.
Could you explain that a little bit more, Jim? Excuse me, John. Could you explain that, John, a little more, how that dual phonation might work?
Yeah, it's range finding. It's used in certain kinds of radar where you have two sources. That means you can look at the angle and distance from one source and then the angle distance from the other, and you can triangulate. Triangulation is the word I'm looking at. We do that all the time with our eyes. There are actually some old cement lookout posts just a mile away from me here on the coast, which were World War II posts for doing triangulation in case there were submarines out there. So it's a known thing. There's some kinds of commercial sonar that use that. Even the LiDAR used in cars and so on is based on time of travel. So if you get a distance by some means, and then you have two different views of it, you can triangulate, and now you can look at different parts of the image or different parts of the world and create an image, rather. So that's the idea. I mean, everything is kind of flat to us if we close one eye. But then again, we imagine we're just looking at it, but we synthesize a visual scene by constant movement and constant movement of the eyes and our heads. And the dolphins are doing the same thing. They're synthesizing from one click to the next a scene. We just don't quite know how yet.
But I think what we're also saying, John, it is likely they are creating a scene. We just don't know how. I mean, nature does not waste all of that evolutionary development in terms of the auditory nerve not to be used. And in the case of the dolphin, so much larger than the optic nerve, there must be a reason behind it, and it seems logical at this point. It has to do with perception and creation of an exchange that might be similar to what we call language.
Yeah, and that's our challenge. That's what we're trying to move forward on.
Casey, you have anything that we should talk about that we haven't?
Yeah, if you guys don't mind, there's some just recaps and a couple clarification things that I would love to ask you guys just real quick something like you just mentioned about the Booba Kiki method. And I think that's really interesting, actually, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who aren't familiar with it. So I was wondering if you could explain that. And also in the experiment you were talking about, were you giving them the sharp and rounded sounds, or were you showing actual images that had those like visual effects?
Good question.
But yeah, if you, like I'm sure some people aren't familiar, if you could just give kind of a summary of what it is, and then I can bring it back to the answer you gave earlier.
So there's something called the Bubakiki effect, which was, I think, discovered in the early 1900s, and they were these two shapes. One had rounded edges, and one had some very pointed edges, and they were called Buba and Kiki. And we'll drop them into this video so you can see what they look like. What was discovered, and so one of the theories in language is that language, there is no hardwiring for language, that language, in fact, develops the hardwire in your brain. How you speak and how you use and construct language is what constructs the hardwiring in your brain. Bubakiki was suggesting that there are some rudimentary processes in the language parts of the brain that are universal. So Buba, again, which has these rounded sides, and Kiki has these pointed sides. And what you do is you take a group of people, and the story you tell them is that aliens have landed on the planet and they've left two symbols, but we couldn't remember which was which. One was Buba and one was Kiki. Which one do you think is Kiki? Or which one do you think is Buba? And 92+% of the people who answer this say Buba and Kiki correctly, saying Buba has the rounded sides and Kiki has the pointed sides. The person who's done the most recent research is one of our science fellows, is Dr. Ramachandran, and he was the one that began to advance more and more understanding of the inherent nature of the brain and its interface with language. That it's not just one way where language is growing the connections in the brain, that is the brain and the external sources are kind of integrating somehow in the language area. What we were doing down here, we'll send you some video we shot yesterday. We were first showing the animal, the dolphins, some shapes, first to desensitize them to the fact that we're going to be showing them something new. We assigned no language to it. We just showed them, and you'll see us showing them the Buba and the Kiki. And then we began to have our interns hold them and then bring the dolphin up to me, and I would say, touch Buba. And the animal would go over and either touch Buba or Kiki. And there was no reward. There was no what we call a bridge. They either chose it right or they chose it wrong. So we started this yesterday, and we're hoping that we're going to see some high enough percentage of correct answers that suggest that, like humans, they may have some pre-wiring in their brain. We're also doing it with sea lions. Sea lions are, again, whole different system, but all of our research that's been down here, we've always used our proto parts of our research with sea lions to see what works and what doesn't work. I don't know, Casey, did I explain Bubakiki enough?
I think that was good. So the next one is more just kind of a recap. And I know you guys have touched on the like 6 different levels of either observed communication or potential communication between them. But so again, this question is really a rehash of what you guys have already stated, but just to kind of summarize it here, what are your main concerns about using AI to analyze dolphin vocalizations? And in your experience, what aspects of communication might be particularly difficult for AI to interpret accurately currently?
Project with wild dolphins is an excellent one. They've got a bunch of corpus of calls or whatever that are have been recorded, and any help in understanding those and categorizing those is going to be incredible. Our view is simply there's a lot more to it than that from what we see, and a lot of it is high frequency, possibly spatial. A lot of it may be a 3-dimensional, 6-dimensional attitude of the dolphins and interactions with, or something else. We see a lot of the resulting behavior, which is hard to explain. They clearly are completely aware of each other. Well, how is that actually working? That's hard to study, and a lot of it hasn't been studied yet. So we think they're frontiers in just understanding how dolphins talk to each other that haven't been approached. And if we don't have the data, then you can't use AI on it. So again, the project as it stands with wild dolphins is the Wild Dolphin Project is excellent. And we just, where we're looking at is off to the side or looking on beyond that.
I'm sorry. I know we can edit this later. I just wanted to ask you both, what kind of people would we be looking for to work with us on examining all these different fields, math and physics and acoustics. If young scientists want to get in touch with us, how can they do that?
Well, I think it's very simple. Anybody, at least with our project, anybody feels called to do and come work with us, they can contact us. We'll put up some contact information on the bottom of the screen as we do this. I think also that we don't discourage somebody whether they're PhD or a young 9-year-old. Like we had a young 9-year-old down here. We had a 9-year-old ask a question that totally stumped me in terms of dolphin information. Let me share it with you for a second. We were having a class on what dolphins do after birth and the birth of a baby, and the consensus has been for years, that the mother doesn't sleep for up to 90 days after the birth of the baby, of the young calf dolphin. And this young 9-year-old, 10-year-old says to me, "You told us that they sleep half of their brain." And I went, "Wait a minute. She can't sleep and still maintain vigilance over her calf." My point here is, this is a 9-year-old he changed my whole idea of some science that I've been using for years. So a person, whether it's a PhD, I mean, we've had, Nobel Prize kinds of people down here before, and we've also had young kids like this 9-year-old who comes up with a remarkable thing. So we'll put it across the bottom. If you're interested, you can go to jjpublishing.org. We have a great thing going on right now. We are going to give the person who wins the sweepstakes a free trip down here to work with us on the science team. They get their airfare paid for, their food while they're here, their room and board. And so if you're feeling a want to do this and feel a little restrained in terms of the budget to be able to do it, enter the sweepstakes, you may be the person who wins the free trip down here and get to work with us. No matter who you are, whether you're a PhD or you're a young 9-year-old like we had before. Is that what you wanted, Jim?
We can work with that. Thank you. Casey, you have any more prompts you want from them?
Yeah, just a couple more. So I guess just real quick, what are you guys most excited about, and how do you think AI could most beneficially complement or enhance your traditional observation and analysis studies that you guys have been doing? Like what do you see as the potential for areas where it would be very beneficial to your research to use?
Well, I've been monitoring AI and have been using it recently as it begins to emerge as a research helper. And there's some new frontiers where they're now allowing the AI to go out and look at all the papers and help you analyze that. So I'm watching that very closely. If you can use AI as an assistant to improve analysis, and I mean very technical analysis, then that would be a huge help. Because what we're looking for is probably something, again, that's going to be surprisingly simple once we figure it out. But we don't know what it is yet. So this is research. Once you found it, how come you didn't do that years ago? Well, it's not that simple. And nature is full of tricks. So
I would comment on what John said. John, in terms of the research process, John is the second stage of the research where we capture information, then John gets to get gray hair trying to figure it out, and that's the second stage. I think in terms of in-field capture, in-field work, the AI will have very little application because it's such a hostile environment at this point for electronics in it. I think the successes are going to be on John's side, which is post-capture of research information.
Okay. Do you guys, is there something that you would envision as kind of a dolphin Turing test, or in layman's terms, I guess, like what would convince you that an AI derived insight has advanced to a level enough that the dolphin communication is robust, scientifically valid? Is there some point that you're like, okay, if it does this, we would be on, that's the eureka moment? Does that exist?
Years and years ago, Lilly was studying dolphins, and in his book, he describes a moment where he's given some kind of puzzle for the dolphin to figure out. And it takes a while, but when the dolphin figures it out, the dolphin gets very excited and swims back and forth. And what do we take from that? Well, that's just like a human being excited at getting a solution. We all love solving the Wordle every morning. We all, when we're kids, we get excited when we've got the solution. There's not much. The Turing test is very interesting, but it's got its limitations. So can you make the person on the other side of the screen really believe you're a human? I think AI is getting very close to that. It could certainly fool almost all of us almost all the time. But does that make it really intelligent or not? How do you know when you're talking to a friend, a mentor, a teacher? Wow, this person's really got a handle on things, and I'm really learning a lot. It's not something you can really pin down. It's everything.
Yeah, I think that, I hope John agrees with me. I suspect that when we are able to clearly identify the language and use it, both John and I, you will hear coming out of our research areas, oh my God, we did it. I mean, it's going to be so obvious to those of us that have been doing this so long that this is not what we had seen before. We have now seen language, and I think the excitement, because again, a scientist, our sense of excitement usually opens up with, how do we know that that just happened? But I think when it happens, we've been doing it for so long, we're going to know it just happened.
That's great. So the last question I have, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but would both of you be open to collaborating with AI researchers to test hypotheses and generated by machine learning models using traditional observational methods?
Absolutely.
And not just us. This AI program is going to be made available to researchers all over the world. There should be a forum that comes together that looks at this in a professional way, bringing all the science, and we would be glad. Let me tell you something. We would be glad to host such a symposium to look at AI and really share information amongst all the Dolphin facilities and see if we can't come up with a really good working group to look at these issues.
Yeah, this has all been really great and enjoyable and fun for me to listen to. Very educational. So I just personally want to thank you. This has been really great.